Welcome back, guys. We are on to part 5 of the trailer building the instructions, and as you can see, I've taken the time to cut all these pieces out, and I've cleaned them up as well, because I really didn't think you'd want to sit and watch me cut and clean parts, because there is a lot. Although I've got the side pieces here, I haven't taken any of these parts off as yet. I thought we'd do that once we actually get it all together. So the main thing is to concentrate on these parts here, which I'm assuming are the steering mechanism for the outboard wheel stations. This being the central sort of box structure of the chassis. And in part 6 we look at more connecting rods. So there's a lot of put together, do not cement on this, so hopefully it'll not take too long to go together. So we've got this part here. There was 1 or 2 ejector pins. You're not going to see them once it all goes together, but I just made sure that I removed any that I thought might foul any of the parts going together, and then obviously gently cleaned any nubs off or sprue attachment points off the side. So we can just set that out of the way for now, and then we'll focus on each of these individual parts. Now, they shouldn't be too bad to put together. So we've got here M29, and then Q16 features heavily in this construction. It's about 3 Q16 parts. And it's just a case of touch and flow. This is where Tamiya Extra Thin really comes into its own. And then you've got Q26, and you just need to make sure you get the orientation correct. It is a very small part. It just pops in there. So it's a good fit. Touch and flow. So just push Q16 down to get a firm bond. And the same with this one here. Obviously making sure it is orientated in line with the post and it's nice and straight. Don't know what this part is, but we can assume it is important. Right, the next part we have is N4, and it says do not cement, so it obviously just fits straight over Q16 like that, and it's nice and smooth and free to move. Now what I think we'll do is we'll just, as we build these parts up, we'll just adhere them into place onto the central part here. So looking at this, then this first part goes in here. Again, it is a reasonably good fit, and it just slots in nicely. So you've got these locating sort of bars, and I don't know if you can see that. You can see how it just slots in on there. So we can just come in on the side with the extra thin, touch it, and it will just touch and flow, and that will bond that together. And you can do belt and braces by just doing it on both sides. And then just, when it's flat on the desk, just push it down. So next one is this one here. So same again, and you notice from when you build it to when you fix it, they turn it through 180 degrees. So just be mindful of that and don't get caught out and put it the wrong way around. I'm assuming it's keyed that in such a way that you can't put it the wrong way around. Yeah, it is, but it's always best to check. So other than the cleanup, it goes together quite well, and if you've got a smaller finger than me, you'll be able to get this in easier than me. Sometimes with these parts it's handy just to pre-glue the part, and that will soften the plastic while you position second part in. It just gives you very quick bonding, so you don't lose the part. As you've seen on a few times in this build, I've lost a few parts and had to find them. The chance of seeing any of this detail is probably pretty remote, let's be honest. Right, so this is now Q44, and then this part just goes in here like so. Quick number one eyeball. Now one thing I've noticed here, I didn't notice when I was cleaning it up, there are some ejector pins here with a little bit of flash on them. So you just need to come in there and scrape clean that. Same on the back. And then we get a better fit. There we go. And once again, touch and float. And if you can't get a hold of Tamiya Extra Thin, then I'd recommend using Mr. Cement S. It's a very, very nice glue. It works with most all plastics. And I've used that for years as well. Yep, this one's got a little bit of flash on it as well. So just go in there, sharp scalpel. Now if you wanted, you could just drop that on and build it all together. For me, I'm just happy enough doing it in sub-assembly, so I'm putting it together as we go. There's actually a little bit of flash on this part here. So it's quite straightforward construction. So far, anyway. And I should imagine there'll be linkages to link all these arms up so they turn in unison with one another. So compared to some of the parts we've been building for this trailer, this is quite a simple construction. Still managed to get a thumbprint there. Just paint it away with the extra thin. Set it flat, press down. Right, so the next part is we're building this piece here, and that starts here with M1 and 11 goes in, touch of glue, and then just push together to get that bond. We really want to make a strong bond here because we don't want it coming apart later on in the line. Right, the next things to go in are these two cylinders. So it's obviously the hydraulic steering cylinders. That goes that way. Now what we'll do is we'll try and put this in without gluing it, and hopefully that'll give us enough leeway to pop in these cylinders and then close it up. So the hydraulic connections go to the outside of the cylinder. Yeah, there we go. It just pops in nicely. Like so. And just squeeze it together so they're fully located. There's no glue, so they still move. That's a good solid construction, and we haven't got any glue on the bottom there. And then we'll just put a substantial amount of glue on the bottom, being careful not to get anywhere near those cylinders. Now, in all honesty, it probably won't matter if you're going to have it just with the wheels orientated straight down, as if it was driving straight down the highway. However, and this is me always saying however, it would pay not to glue this, purely because A, it gives you the option, but B, you've got a lot of individual parts to line up, and if you happen to glue it out of position, then it might cause you problems later down the line. Right, we've got Q19 here, and I've left them connected together as they come off the sprue. That's purely because I didn't want to lose them. So just go in there with the sprue cutters and detach that connection point. And then those simply go straight into the cylinder, like so. Right, so that's the first part of that construction. Then the second part is this piece here. So this is M28, and then it's not Q19, it's M19 for that part there. What the difference is, I don't know, but that's what they're calling for in the instructions. So set it down, press down. You want a firm bond. You then got Q26, same as the rest of them. It locates nicely if you don't flick it across the desk. There we go. That's it. Right, and then we've got N22 to go on first. Now, bearing in mind there is a profile to this, and the pins are offset to one side. Looking at the instructions, then those pins go to the rear of this part, or the front, I don't know which way around it is. So they pop on. Like so. That's a good free fit. Right, then the next thing to do is to take this part, and the two hydraulic cylinders lock onto those pins, like so, and then obviously that base plate also locks onto the front of this floor plate. And again, it's going to be a little bit interesting to get it together. So there's one or two different ways of doing it. I don't want to do it where I lose the rods at the end, because that's just going to be a pain in the hoop. But what we can do is put a little drop of glue on there and temporarily bond these parts together, and then that will at least hold one end for us whilst we're fixing the rest of them. And what we need to do is locate the pistons and hold that one whilst we do this one. There we go. Right. And then the next part to go on is N21, and again notice the orientation of the detents in the part for these pins to fit in, so it must go the same way when you pop it down, and it locks in, and it says do not cement. So the question is then, how the hell do we keep it all together without falling off? Because as soon as it's turned upside down to go on the chassis, it's all going to fall apart. Right, we'll take a moment here and we'll put a drop of glue on the rest of this part just to help secure it in place. Just a bit of pressure, and then we can look here at this part here, and there are two spaces here and here that we should be able to just wick in a little bit of glue, and that will hold the parts together, but it will maintain that articulation. Just keeping it away from all the pivot points. We can just come in with the tweezers and then grip that specific point to try and get that bond in there. You could do it with super glue as well as extra thin. Well, the super glue can become brittle over time, and we just check that we've still got that articulation, which we do. Right, so that's that part held together now, which is really good. And then the next one is N5. N5 is not a directional part, it just goes on. And what we do then is exactly the same on those spaces, just a little touch of glue just to bond it all together. And that's where the capillary action of Tamiya Extra Thin really pays off, because it does wick nicely around parts. Bit of gentle pressure just to hold it in place, and check the articulation moves very freely. Happy days. That's that part put together. And just check at the back that it's not moved and everything's still in proper alignment. Obviously when that cures up it will be solid as a rock. Right, and then from that part there, what they've done is they've turned it around and make sure the orientation is correct, and then that part there sits in here by the looks of it. Yeah, that just sits like so. So a slightly different mechanism for fixing it to the center chassis. So need to make sure those ejector pins are smooth, which they are. We could come in here with contactor, but if you put a generous amount of extra thin down, it will work just fine. And press on the pivot point and the back to get it bonded in. And what we can do is when it's in, so we can wick a little bit more glue underneath just to help it bond, and then we'll get a pair of self-closing tweezers like so, and we can just grip it there in a couple of places, and that will help it glue together. Five minutes like that and it should be fine. Right, what I'm going to do now is we'll just set this to one side whilst it's curing up. Then we've got to think about these side plates here, and there is a whole heap of stuff to glue onto these. Yeah, I'm not quite sure why there's so many holes on the inside. I will go and we'll get all these parts off the sprues ready to attach to this, and by the time we've got them off, that'll be cured enough. We can glue up the center spine and then move forward on to step 6. So back in a minute. Right, we're back after securing a significant amount of parts from the sprue. Now, try and make sure this is in focus for you guys. I'll just zoom out a little bit. There we go. So basically we just line them up as they go, and then they'll just pop in where they need to pop in. Just pay attention, we're putting it in the right place. So this is all the hydraulics, I should imagine, that we're working with here. So the best thing we can do is just, as it's a nice firm fit, is just pop them in. I'll zoom back in actually. Just pop them in. There we go. Where they're supposed to go, and then once they're in, we'll come along with some extra thin and glue them in place. Of course, they don't want to fit very well when you want to do it on camera. There we go. Nope. Alright, total pain in the arse. Will we see these parts? Who knows? I've got the choice, we need to put them on. Yeah, there we go. So it's actually quite a firm positive location, so we can just plug them in and then we'll set them in place with extra thin. There we go. Now they'll get my act together with shaping. Now note that these parts are directional as well, so just make sure we get them all in the correct orientation, otherwise it will cause significant problems later on in the build. They're reasonably flash and burr free, so minimal cleanup on them. Now what we can do is just turn it over and you can see where all these parts have been put in. So we'll just come and we'll dot some extra thin on the back of the parts, and that will bond them in place rather nicely. It will avoid any glue staining on the front. And then if you want to, you can just come back now we've put glue on and just give it a final press to make sure it's fully home. Right, so that's that side done. Now we've got this side, so same again, make sure we get the orientation in the correct manner. And it is just going to be a mirror of what we've done on the first side, and looking at the locating holes, then they will only go one way for parts like this, where you've got a large and a small locating hole, so you cannot get it wrong. This part, pay attention, it does go that way around. Of course, mine's not want to grip, so I'll do it with my fingers. Oh, bloody awkward. There we go. It is a good firm fit, so check the orientation of this part, make sure you get it correct. The problem I've got is with my fine pointed tweezers, it's actually getting in the way of the locating pin, so sometimes it pays to have a slightly blunter point of tweezers, and then that makes it easier to he says it should make it easier to locate these parts and get them home, but that's just not wanting to go in. There we go. Just an exceedingly tight fit. There might have possibly been a bit of flash involved there, just impinging it. A little bit of brute force and ignorance has obviously paid the way, but you shouldn't really do that in modelling. If it doesn't go properly, then yeah, see that one's bouncing back out, so there's obviously something preventing it, or it's not in properly. Sometimes you'll get away and you won't break a part, but 9 times out of 10 you will end up breaking the part if you're going to force it. So it should be a snug fit, but not overly tight. And if you drop the part on the floor like me, make sure there's no fluff on it, because that will attract the attention of the extra thin glue and cause you no end of woe. Right, so again, that's all the parts in. Just to do it different, you could come in then and just do it from the outside, touch and flow that way. It really is just whatever your preference is. As long as you're happy doing it, then that's all that matters. There we go. Right. That is those parts done. Now we need to think about getting them on this centerpiece. I'm thinking what we'll probably end up doing is we'll actually use a combination, my favorite combination of extra thin and Revell contactor, and that will give us a really strong bond that sets up reasonably quickly. But what I'm going to do before I glue these parts, because I think another way that might actually be better, is if we look at part 6. Now part 6 here, we've got these parts here that will obviously go between the two side pieces, and I think getting to the point where we can put these parts in and then close it up will make for a very, very strong bond. It would mean we probably can't use Revell contactor. That's just the way of it. But I think this will be a stronger way of doing it than the way they've suggested in the instructions. So looking at part 6, then we need all these parts here, and we need all these parts here. So I'll get them all taken off, cleaned up and ready to go, and then we'll come back and we'll actually have a go at putting this together. So back in a minute. Okay, we're back. We've got everything off the sprue. So we need to start and put these parts together. So it's Q31, and it's the same part that goes in each of these. I'm actually going to have to use my tweezers because my fingers are too big to fit. So touch and flow the glue around the mounting point, and then just get Q31, pop him down. Once he's down, push him home. And you want to put enough glue that it bonds, obviously not too much glue that it's going to go everywhere. Q31 will only go on one way. Right, so that's those parts on. So now we've got the interesting task, and we'll do it side by side. Just keep these in the order they're in. Thankfully they're kind of an ascending order. So we need to put the side on first and thread the, hopefully you've got a good view of this, yeah I think so. So thread the pivot arms through the apertures, and then we take the connecting rods. Now if you can see that there is a flange here on that side. That flange needs to go down the way onto the pins. So first one goes on there. So the next part to go on is part Q22. Again, it goes over the first part to link it all together, and then the final part to go on is Q52. Q52 isn't a shouldered part. Right. So once you've done one side, you can probably tack in not sure actually. I think you have to leave it. This is where it gets very tricky. So we go for the second side. And same again. Thread that through. And starting from the end with Q21. So you make sure we're orientating the part correctly. Q22. There we go. That's that in. And then finally we've got Q52. Right, now once all these parts are on, we then need to get these top plates on. And this is going to be the challenge. I think they need just to go in via the side if we can. There's no easy way of doing this. I think if you'd actually glued these sides together to do this, you'd actually really struggle. And of course, I've got the wrong part. So, start again. Wrong part and I've lost an arm. So I need this part here, which is 2. No, I've got the right part. Right, so these parts go in and lock in, but I am yet to see how this all stays together without having to glue it, which I think we're just going to end up having to do. Like I said, for me this isn't a problem because I was never intending to have articulation on the trailer. But anybody that is intending to have articulation on the trailer, this might affect how you do stuff. I think if you'd actually glued these side pieces in place before you'd done this, you wouldn't have the flexibility to get these parts in. So once I get it all together and I'm happy with the alignment, I am actually going to glue this. And it might be that they just didn't want you to glue it until you'd completed construction, got the alignment sorted, and then glue it together. Right, so next one. There we go, and the final one. Now with all those parts in place, that technically holds all the arms in place. And then we come to put these securing points in place. And I think actually with these securing points, we then get to a position where once it's all glued in, it will hold itself together and we will have articulation. Let me start with this one on the end first. So it goes on this way. Not easy at all. There we go. Okay. Yep. That pivot point is locking in there. That's it. Right, so with all that together, we now have spaces in the middle to keep the side panels parallel, which is an absolute godsend. And it firms up the whole construction significantly. This one is the, I think, the trickiest one to put together. There we go. Right, so first things first, I think we're going to glue the center pivot brackets in. So the first one starts here, and it goes in here. And we'll just hold it up to see that we've actually got it located properly. Which we have. It's bang smack in the middle, which is good. So the second one then, we're just wicking the glue in at the end. So it bonds. Gets the first bond anyway to the base plate. Same with this one. Just a firm press. This is probably some of the most loosest fitting parts of this whole kit, actually, looking at them. Last one. You can actually reach in the holes and get glue on the inside. And what I'm going to do is actually take the instructions out from underneath it so we're actually fully on the flat. And that will hopefully aid us in getting this lot lined up properly. Take all the flecks out of the base plate. So the next thing to do is we'll start from the front. And we'll just line up the side panels with the front of this piece here. There's a kick up angle on it, so as long as we've got it lined up right to the front, we can get some super Tamiya extra thin in there. We start the bonding process. Now what we can do is also give, if we wanted to, give it a little assistance with super glue, but I don't think we need to. If we just press and hold for a second, and then we'll turn it around and we'll get the other side done. There we go. And it just naturally wants to sit in that position. It kind of locates itself on the kick up nicely. Just goes so far forward and stops, which is good. So we'll come in with the extra thin. So just gently hold, pinch in and push down. And with it being on the flat, it will make sure that it's nice and even and parallel and it's pressing in correctly. Right, next thing to do is actually we'll glue in the top of this first center spacer. So touch and flow each side. So whilst we're still pushing down, just pinch. And then we want to glue the front section. And when you're doing stuff like this, working in sections is really the only way to go. But the part will naturally firm up. The more we get glued, just take the time, just hold it, give that plastic a chance, the glue a chance to dissolve the plastic and get that bond going. It will evaporate off reasonably quickly. And if we need to move the parts any just to get alignment sorted, we've got time to do that. Don't be too firm, too coarse though, because you will break the existing bonds we've put on this first piece here. Okay, right. Now, where do we go from here? Well, we need to work our way down. So just before we commit to any more glue, we need to just to check that the top part is seating correctly. And we can pinch that. There is no locating tabs for these sides to lock on, it's just a flush fit. So it really does come down to us taking our time to make sure we're getting it all put together properly. So touch of glue along the top. A bit of gentle pressure just to start that bonding process. There we go. And then we can turn the part over and we can wick in some glue along the bottom here just for a couple of inches. 3 or 4 centimeters for those that are working in metric. Inches for our friends over the water. Noticed here that we've actually got a bit of misalignment. It's not really a problem. We can sort that out. There we go. That's us back in alignment. Right, so now that we've glued the side, so just a bit of downward pressure, and then we need to pinch in at the bottom here. So we're getting that to bond to the locating rails that run along this central spine. So just pinch and hold. And we can look and bond some more. Now we want to bond down the end of this. And making sure that we've got a good solid bond on these spaces will ensure that we've got a good strong construction and it won't move. So we move on to the next one. So same again, we'll just come in here and we'll bond the top. So keeping it on the flat, and I think keeping it on the flat is definitely the key. Touch and float. Pinch, just nudge it down to make sure it's set. Pinch and hold. Like I said, you could use a little drop of super glue on some of this if you wanted to aid the speed of the process, but realistically this glue is reacting really nicely to this plastic, so it's not taking very long for it to get a decent solid grip. And so long as you're not absolutely flooding it with extra thin that it takes ages to evaporate off and start to get that plastic weld going on, then you should be fine. So we go into the bottom, pinch it in, and it's starting to firm up already. It really is starting to get a good grip of itself. And we can come in and get the ends done. Now I don't know if I'd use closed pegs on this. There's so many different bits we can damage by careless pegging. So we just have to do it the old-fashioned way with our hands. It really is starting to bond up lovely. So last one. Keeping this on the flat, it has taken or avoided any significant warp coming in at the part as well. So that's another thing you need to watch. You don't get that torsional twist. You want it to be level and even. And now that we've gotten this far, we can actually come in here and think about gluing up the remainder of the plates. And if you look at them, They really do want just to get in there and sit in level. If there was a lot of deformation in this part, these wouldn't want to glue up as easy as they are. So one side at a time, start at the end, hold it, let that glue work, and then when we're happy we can come in here and just wick in the whole joint. Wick it in from where we left off the last time. Then we look at the other side, starting at the end, hold. And these are lining up really rather nicely. I'm quite happy with how this has gone together. So come in from about here, just where the gap is, where the glue's not been. Right along that joint, and then back on the flat, push down, get that good even bond. We can check on the inside to make sure that it's all located properly, and if need be we could have wicked in extra glue there. Right, so, and that's that centerpiece done, and we still have full articulation of these parts, which is exactly where we needed to be. So a tricky construction, quite involved, but not out with the realms of possibilities of doing it okay. So we'll leave that there now. We need to let that just cure up. A little bit of clean up on some of these rods now that they're in place, and then we can actually come back in and think about getting the rest of the trailer done. So having a quick look at the instructions from part 6, we're moving on to part 7, and that's actually starting the main construction of the floor, and then that's where this center part comes down. So actually looking at this, we could have used a lot more super glue to make this go together quicker, for a more instant bond, because nobody's going to see on the inside of that. However, I'm happy the way we've done it, because the way we've done it with the extra thin and bonding it in sections means it's a really, really solid piece. So I am going to get organized for these parts here, and we will come back to start step 7 and actually get some serious progress on this trailer. Any comments or questions, please pop them down below. I always take time to read them and respond, and I appreciate everyone taking time to ask questions. And until next time, guys, stay safe and happy modeling.